Hello! It is Monday, which means it's time for another Jolum album review. For the last 2 weeks, I've covered albums that were from the year 1992. I hope to do an album rankings on the best albums of 1992 someday. But for right now, I'm going to be covering Black Sabbath's 16th studio record, Dehumanizer, which incidentally reunited the Mob Rules era Black Sabbath with Ronnie James Dio, Vinny Appice, Geezer Butler, and Tony Iommi. When you're done watching this episode, you can go back and watch previous episodes of album review. The album review playlist is in the description box. Let's get down to business. Dehumanizer was the first Black Sabbath album in over a decade to feature singer Ronnie James Dio and drummer Vinny Appice, and their first in 9 years to feature original bassist Geezer Butler, who last appeared on the Black Sabbath album Born Again in 1983. So this, incidentally, reunited the Mob Rules lineup. The initial writing and demo sessions took place at Rich Bitch Studios in Birmingham that originally featured drummer Cozy Powell. Bootlegs of these sessions exist. However, when Powell became injured with a broken hip, he was replaced by Appice. The band spent 2 weeks writing material before spending 6 weeks rehearsing and recording demos at Mono Valley Studios in Wales. Lyrically and musically, Dehumanizer is considered one of Sabbath's heaviest albums. Lyrical themes vary from computer worship as God, computer God, to televangelist, TV crimes, to individualism, and doubts about the afterlife after all the dead. During the sessions for the album, Tony Martin made a short comeback when invited by the band to try these songs out. He stayed for just a couple of days, and the band continued with Dio. Martin stated, "I already started my first solo album, Back Where I Belong, so when I got the call to go back, I was committed by that point. And in fact, it was just a couple of months after they had started a thing with Ronnie James Dio. I was determined to finish my solo thing, and so turned them down at that point. We did keep in touch though, and I went to some shows. Ronnie wasn't too pleased, but eventually they had enough and asked me to rejoin again later. So it felt like I hadn't actually left. In fact, I was never formally fired. The phone just stopped ringing. Ian Gillan, the singer of Deep Purple and a former Black Sabbath singer, asked me once if I had been fired, and I said no. He said, neither have I. We should turn up one day and walk on stage. Demo sessions with Powell yielded numerous recordings, including 2 unreleased songs. The Nightlife, also called Next Time, whose riff was used for Psychophobia on Cross Purposes, and Bad Blood, which sounds very similar to I on Dehumanizer. These songs can be found with other demos and untitled songs on the complete Dehumanizer Sessions bootleg. Computer God was the title of an unreleased song by the Terry Geezer Butler Band back in 1986. Only the title made it to Dehumanizer. The Butler version is available as a download on his website. Master of Insanity was also an unreleased Geezer Butler Band track, of which the Dehumanizer version is essentially a re-recording. Master of Insanity was the only track on Dehumanizer that Dio did not have a hand in writing the lyrics. Jimmy Bell, the guitarist with Butler's band, actually wrote the song. Geezer promised a credit and payment, but Jimmy was never paid or credited for his contributions. The album's lead single, TV Crimes, was a criticism of American televangelists, particularly Jeff Fenholt, who briefly worked with Iommi in the mid-1980s on what would become the Seventh Star. We wanted it to be real rock and roll, real basic. Dio told WERS's Nasty Habits show, "We wanted to capture what we are, live, and that's really what I think we did. We didn't do tons of overdubs or a lot of chorusy kind of things. I think the important thing is that the band should be able to do all the things they do on record live, without any kind of sampling crap or that rubbish. So of course we didn't. We recorded it true to what the band is, Just guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, you know? A couple of keyboard things here and there. Although Sabbath's lineup was the same as 1981's Mob Rules, the musical direction is very different and a marked change from their previous material, particularly the preceding Tear. Much of the album anticipates the directions taken by Dio in his solo band's next two records, Strange Highways in 1993 and Angry Machines in 1996. Commercially, the album marked a resurgence for Sabbath, reaching the top 40 in the UK, and it peaked at number 44 on the Billboard 200 charts. Taking a look at the track listings, all the tracks are written by Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, and Ronnie James Dio. We kick it off with Computer God clocking in at 6:10. After All the Dead clocks in at 5:37. TB Crimes clocks in at 3:58. Letters from Earth clocks in at 4:12. Master of Insanity clocks in at 5:54. Time Machine clocks in at 4:10. Sins of the Father clocks in at 4:43. The longest song on this record, Too Late, clocks in at 6:54. I clocks in at 5:10. And Buried Alive clocks in at 4:47. In the aftermath of Dehumanizer's release, which was released in the US on June 30th, 1992, Tony Iommi reflected back in 1997, "It was good to try that with Ronnie, but we lost millions on it because of the time we took to record it and fly backwards and forwards to the States with everything, all the gear bringing it back, recording it here in the UK, a lot of messing about and a lot of money wasted. If it came to it again now, we could plan it different and it'd be okay, but we had to try that. Originally Cozy was involved, then he wasn't." This incarnation of Sabbath ended when Dio's contract with the band ended several days before the Costa Mesa reunion shows in November of 1992. According to Iommi himself, Dio quit because he was asked to support Ozzy Osbourne's final shows at Costa Mesa, referring to Ozzy as a clown. Dio would not record or perform with the band again until 2006. For the two Costa Mesa shows, the band replaced Dio with Judas Priest frontman Rob Halford. On the second night, Iommi, Butler, and original Sabbath drummer Bill Ward joined Osbourne on stage for 4 songs. Halford and Dio were friends, Dio having been impressed with Halford's work ethic on the Stars project, and how Halford would only do the Costa Mesa shows with Dio's blessing, which he received when he spoke with Dio by phone. Both shows were unofficially recorded in their entirety and are now widely circulated as audio and video bootlegs. Dehumanizer is included in the Black Sabbath box set The Rules of Hell. Dehumanizer was re-released on February 7th of 2011. This version includes a bonus disc with alternate recordings of several songs, Master of Insanity, Letters from Earth, and Time Machine, the latter of which was available on the US version of the album as a bonus track. Several other songs recorded on July 25th, 1992 in Tampa, Florida. In 2021, Kerrang ranked Dehumanizer as the 8th best Black Sabbath album in the best to worst rankings of the band's discography. My overall rating for Black Sabbath's Dehumanizer happens to be a 70 out of 100. Now, in the past, Black Sabbath albums, such as from Ozzy and from Dio himself, were pretty good for the most part. I like the songs Computer God, After All the Dead, TV Crimes, I, Buried Alive, and The Time Machine. I didn't care too much for the rest of the album at all. So, it was what it was. And that relationship between Dio and the rest of Black Sabbath wouldn't last long anyway, because Dio went on to reform Dio and start Strange Highways in 1993, and it was released in the US in 1994. So that's all I got to say for this week's Joe Lum's album review.
Long